know the man here to my left. Hello, Skip Bayless.
Hello, Shay. I'm back.
Yes, you are.
And I cannot compete with that suit. You win. I should just go home. Here I dress for a funeral, your funeral, but
Right. It would be
hey,
your funeral.
yeah.
It would be your funeral.
The future of ESPN is starting to look very familiar. Headline at Awful Announcing. The future of ESPN is starting to look familiar. To their credit, ESPN has spent the last 12, maybe 18 months attempting to eradicate the woke fungus, attempting to eradicate the disease that ESPN infected themselves with. The network seems to be building towards a future with less politics, less social commentary, and more sports. Imagine that. A sports network that features likable personalities who actually talk about sports. What a concept! Me personally, I think Pat McAfee deserves most of the credit for revitalizing ESPN. Pat McAfee proved that a collection of dudes talking about sports could still work in the year of our Lord 2026. And based on the success of Pat McAfee, ESPN has either rehired or they are potentially rehiring established stars who focus on sports. Earlier this year, Rich Eisen made his immaculate return to ESPN. He moved his radio show over to ESPN Radio, which has been a literal graveyard for the last 10 or so years. ESPN Radio was similar to the WNBA dump. It's the place where mainstream careers go to disappear. Couple of months ago, Skip Bayless, he returned to First Take. Now, supposedly, this was just a one-off appearance. Supposedly, Skip Bayless will not be a regular contributor, but I think if it were up to ESPN, Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless, they would be re-entering into holy matrimony. America's favorite couple will be getting back together, reunited, and it feels so good. Yesterday, ESPN made another exciting announcement with ESPN Radio as they announced the return of Mike and Mike. Unfortunately, Mike Golic is not reuniting with Mike Greenberg. He's reuniting with his son Junior, who also happens to be named Mike. I'm sure you've noticed by now, there seems to be a clear pattern developing at ESPN. The network is relying on established stars. The network is relying on nostalgia. ESPN is trying to recreate the golden age of the worldwide leader in sports before it made the courageous transition into the worldwide leader in woke. The question is why? Even though they would never admit it publicly, I think ESPN is signaling that they no longer have the ability to create new stars, which is why they're relying on old established stars to carry the network. Think about it. Besides Stephen A. Smith, who is the last star ESPN created? Who is the last star at ESPN that was must-see TV? Pat McAfee, he was already established. Shannon Sharpe, hey, it's me, Shay Shay! The grown man pushing 60 who, for reasons unknown, continues to refer to himself as Shay Shay, he became a star at Fox Sports FS1 by crying over Skippy B being a meanie to me. Shannon Sharpe destroyed the mainstream career of Skip Bayless to elevate his own. Now, to his credit, Shannon Sharpe is talented. His Nightcap show here on YouTube with Joe Johnson and Ocho De Niro, excellent show. But there is no denying the fact that Shannon Sharpe benefited off the demise of Skip Bayless. Anyway, ESPN's reliance on old stars is a clear signal that they are temporarily giving up on creating new stars. And it's not hard to understand why. For starters, take a look at this. This is one of the failed stars that ESPN has desperately tried to get their audience to embrace. I can never pronounce her name correctly. I think it's pronounced Shanae Agwumike, Shanae Agwumake. Oh, who gives a damn?
It doesn't matter what your name is!
Most people have trouble with her name because they don't know who in the hell she is. Over the last couple of years, ESPN has desperately tried to make Shanae a star. They've described her as an NBA analyst, even though she's clearly never played or coached in the NBA. But again, take a look at the graphic. Read it very closely. This segment is described as a safe space, which it has to be to ask a question this blasphemous. Is A.J. Wilson's greatness more impressive than Tom Brady? What? Excuse me? Let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. You're asking me if A.J. Wilson, who plays in the WNBA dump, a league of make pretend, a league filled with unathletic, unskilled players, a league where the only thing that's real is the fact that it's real boring, and you're asking me if A.J. Wilson is on the same level as Tom Brady? I think a more appropriate comparison would be comparing A.J. Wilson to Greg Brady. The only person that belongs in the same conversation as Tom Brady is the icon of icons, Michael Jordan. Comparing A.J. Wilson to Tom Brady, that's like comparing a top shelf filet to a frozen wiener. Recently, ESPN extended the contract of David Dennis Jr. Uncle KC, who in the hell's David Dennis Jr.? If you're a regular viewer here on the channel, you know him as David the Junior Doofus. The Junior Doofus is basically a younger version of Crying Ryan Clark, which is another star that ESPN has failed miserably in creating. David Dennis Jr., he is the senior writer at Anscape, the division of ESPN that's dedicated to covering mythical racism. Recently, the Junior Doofus has been given more high-profile roles at the network. Now, of course, this elevation into the mainstream, it hasn't helped his swipe right status on Bumble, which remains at 0%. Clearly, the ladies are telling the Junior Doofus the same thing ESPN's audience is telling him, which is, get off my TV. You know, this week I watched a segment of First Take. It was just as news was breaking that LeBron James was leaving the Lakers. I wanted to hear what Stephen A. Smith thought about it. I was expecting to see Stephen A. Smith, Brian Windhorst, maybe Ken Perkins. I was expecting to see people who actually know what the hell they're talking about with the NBA. I click on the video, and what do I see? The Junior Doofus and some dude named Vince Goodwill. The same Vince Goodwill that claimed recently winning the NBA Finals was winning a participation trophy. Initially, when I heard that toxic mouth fart a couple of weeks ago, I thought Vince Goodwill was talking about the winner of the WNBA Finals, which, as you guys know, the winner of the WNBA Finals receives all-season access to the Golden Toilet. And since the WNBA is the equity league, they spread the toilet around equally. But this dude, he was actually talking about the NBA. For the better part of a decade, ESPN has tried to turn pretend NFL analyst Mina Kimes into a mainstream star. Uncle KC, Mina Kimes is a major star. She has 500,000 followers on the Instagram. Have you ever wondered why Mina Kimes has never been given her own show at ESPN? She's been working at the network for at least 10 years, but for some reason, Mina Kimes has never been given her own show. I wonder why. ESPN knows no one will watch it. Last month, Mina Kimes had 640,000 views here on YouTube. One of her latest videos, which was released yesterday, 250 views. Clinton Yates, Crying Ryan Clark, the originator of the term huge embarrassing failure, Bomani Jones. Sarah Spain, who's probably living in Spain right now because there is not a single media outlet in America willing to give Sarah Spain a job. For 5, maybe even 10 years, ESPN has tried to create new stars. They've invested millions of dollars into huge embarrassing failures. They've invested millions of dollars into diversity hires. So it's understandable why ESPN would revert to the past. It's understandable why they would rely on established stars to carry the network, especially ESPN Radio. But here's the problem. It's hard to build towards the future when you're looking at the past. I remember years ago, Vince McMahon and the WWF, they were relying on nostalgia. They were struggling to create stars. Their young talent just wasn't resonating with the audience. So Vince McMahon, he started relying on stars from the past. Bill Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, The Rock. While it works in the short term and definitely generates mainstream interest, it can actually be a hindrance to young talent because they're outshined by established stars. I think it's great ESPN is doing 90s throwbacks on SportsCenter. I was never a fan of Mike and Mike personally, but their show was incredibly popular. Will it be popular with Mike Golic and his son Junior? Who knows? But Mike Golic was one of the voices of ESPN Radio during its golden era in the 2000s. It would be great to see Skip Bayless return to ESPN in a full-time capacity. Now, I don't think Stephen A. Smith will allow that to happen because he would have to diligently prepare every day for a debate, and Stephen A. Smith just doesn't have the time to do that. But Skip Bayless returning would be great for ESPN. However, bringing back legends, that does not address the root of the real problem. A network that used to have the power to turn unknowns into household names. A network that made Keith Olbermann, KTP! The network that made the boy named Pooh a mainstream star. The network that launched the mainstream career of Colin Cowherd. That network no longer has the ability or the power to create new stars. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.